So rewind about 2 years ago, I was pretty burnt out on paid ads, which I've been using extensively, and I decided to move towards an all organic approach to my marketing. So how did that go? Let's talk about it today on the Ronin Author. Hi everybody, welcome to the Ronin Author. I'm your host, Ryan McGinnis. I am the owner of S&D Designs, the owner of 217 Press, and a self-published author on Amazon. I created this podcast not to be some influencer or guru trying to tell you the expert way to reach the promised land. No, I created this to share my experiences as a self-published author. I'm pretty early in my journey of being a self-published author. I've been doing it for about 4 years and I have 5 books out. And I just wanted to share my experiences with you in hopes that it helps you find your way. And in addition, I decided that much like a Ronin in ancient Japan, modern self-published authors have a pretty lonely profession. We spend a lot of time sitting at home by ourselves, writing, marketing, doing everything. And the other reason I did this podcast was to sort of serve as a support group for self-published authors and to just tell you, hey, you're not alone. I want this to be a support group. If you guys want to reach out in the comments or shoot me a message or whatever, I'm always here. You can find me through my website or whatever, and let's talk. Let's have a dialogue, and maybe we'll learn from each other. Who knows? But this episode, I wanted to talk about, early in my author career, I've talked about this before. I was really into paid ads. I was really into paid ads. When I first started, I did a lot of research before my first book came out. Part of that research was reading Robert Ryan's Amazon Ads Unleashed, and it's a really good book. And actually his whole series of books. He does a book about blurbs. He does a book about several other things. And those are dynamite books, and you learn a lot. There is a treasure trove of knowledge in them. But I was at a stage where I started out the gate, I was like, ads. And I had read that doing ads when you only had one book out was not really the way to go. But I also wanted to promote my book. What was the point in putting a book out there if you weren't going to promote it? So I spent a lot of money on ads. And, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I've sold what I feel like is a wild amount of books. Like I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not a best-selling author, but I sold, quite a bit of books. But I also spent quite a bit of money, and rarely did I break even. And so I got really burnt out. At one point I switched from Amazon ads to Facebook ads. And that went a little better, but I'll talk more about ads in a future podcast. But I did switch to Facebook ads. I was a little more successful with that. Meaning, when I say successful, I mean I probably didn't sell as many books through Facebook as I did through the Amazon ads, but I spent a lot less money, and I actually made a profit, for a while, And my most successful year ever was on Facebook ads, But like I said, talking about ads is the future. Not the now. The thing I got burnt out on was you could have an ad that worked, and then it didn't. And then you had to change things. And then you had an ad that worked for a while and then it didn't. Or you'd do a new ad and it worked for like 2 days and then stop. And, I really got burnt out on all that. And so I decided that I was just burnt out on ads and I didn't want to do them anymore and I didn't want to spend the money. And so I decided I was going to go an all organic route. I was going to totally just do organic. And whether that organic was through YouTube or whether it was through other channels, other social media, I decided that I was just going to do that. And so step number 1, I started blogging on my website, which I had done from time to time. My website has a blog, has a news and updates section, which I use to announce, new products, new books, book releases, book sales, I also started blogging on there and talking about my author journey, which I had, but I was doing it much more purposefully now. I was doing it on a weekly basis. I was writing a blog. It was coming out every Friday. and I would do that. And, I was working on my newsletter, which, I still get followers through the newsletter, and, and I make book sales through the newsletter. And I think that's essential. I would never, I did a whole podcast about the importance of email newsletters. And so if any of my followers are watching this from my email newsletter and are like, hey man, you haven't sent us an email in a while, and yeah, I know I've been busy, but we will get to you. But anyway, email newsletter. I got busy on social media. Most prominently I was on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I got on there trying to do the whole book talk thing, and and I did my thing, and I made an effort at it, and I grew followers. I grew a lot of followers on TikTok and on Facebook, and because Facebook, your page doesn't really get that much reach, because they throttle it because they want you to buy ads. But if you do it through groups, if you join groups that allow you to talk about yourself, because a lot of groups are like, you'll see like thriller authors, and it'll be like no promo. And I get that, because otherwise you'll get a bunch of spammers. But at the same time, how do you expect me to be in a group and be an author if I don't talk about what I'm writing? So, find the right group, but I did that. I got into it. I did all my social media and stuff, and truthfully, my reach was great. My reach was absolutely phenomenal. I grew followers. I was like, yeah, as far as branding goes, man, I'm getting the word out there. I would do a blog and then share it on my Facebook and share it on my newsletter, and everybody, and I was getting reads, I was getting follows, I was getting likes, I was doing all that stuff. And there were two things. There were two things going on. And that is, one, I got so busy doing all this marketing that I didn't have time to write. And I know some of you guys feel me. Like the last episode of the podcast, I was talking about, wouldn't it be great to just write and not have to market stuff? But that's not how it works. So I got so hung up doing all the marketing and the post and the blogs and the, and all that jazz, that I didn't take time to write as much. I stopped writing as much. In fact, last year, and there were other extenuating circumstances. We had like a medical emergency with my wife that took a lot of my attention and scope and focus for like months. But I only came out with one book last year. And, the first year that I came out with a book, I came out with a book in the fall. And then the following year, I came out with a short story and a book. And then the third year I came out with the second year I came out with 3 books, because I came out, 4 books if you count the short story. And then my third year I came out with 1 book, and now this year it looks like I'm only going to come out with 1 book. And, is that because I had my head up my own ass? Maybe. I go through stuff. We all do, but if I'm being honest, but this isn't the episode for that. The point is, I was doing all organic, and I didn't have time to write because I was too busy marketing all the time. And the other thing is, my book sales cratered. I was doing the ads, I was doing my thing, and I know, you do a series. Like the big thing there for a while was everybody was like, oh, do a series, and then you just market the first book of the series, and then everybody reads through and blah, blah, blah. And I really think series, unless you're like a romantasy author, a smutty author, you naughty people. My wife loves your stuff. But, unless you're like one of those people, I don't think series are really working that much anymore. Maybe they are. Somebody can correct me in the comments. But I've actually made a vow that if I write a series again, I'm only going to write a trilogy. Because, the Tears of the Dragon series, the last book was book 5. And I do intend on doing a book 6, because I don't like to leave things open-ended. But if I'm being truthful, the sales after about the 3rd book or so really trail off, So maybe not doing that as much. But my point is, all all organic was fine if you're into doing, getting your reach up and stuff, but I haven't been able to really sell books like that, not in the way that I was used to doing with ads, and I think it also makes me question why I'm doing this. Like, why do I do videos? Why do I do Facebook posts? Am I trying to be an influencer? Am I trying to be a content creator? And because that takes you away from your real job, which is being a writer. And that's something to think about, because honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I like doing these videos. They become more video journals than anything else. It's a way for me to get my thoughts out there and share them. And if somebody else sees it and is like, oh my God, I agree with that, then awesome, I've done my job. But I think my number one job is being a writer. So so I think what I need to do going forward, ultimately, because I've started a new experiment. Everything's experiments with me. I don't know if you guys get it. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed that from the podcast, is that everything are experiments to me. I run experiments. I try stuff. I see how it's going to work. If it doesn't work good, then I axe it. And right now, even these podcasts are experiments. It's to see if I can reach people and to put my thoughts out there for posterity, But my new experiment is that I'm going to cut back on some of my organic, and instead I'm going to do some organic, but I'm also going to do some ads. And I think that'll free up some time for me if I can get ads to work correctly, that it'll free some time up for me so that I can get back to doing what I want to do, which is write, if the migraines will let me. But so that's my experience. I don't think organic works totally just by itself. I mean, you can do it and you can have your happy little life and you can have your followers and stuff, but if your intent is to sell books and to get your books in front of people, it's probably not the way to do it. Not totally, not just that. You have to have a mix, So that's my thoughts on that. That is my thoughts on that for this week. That's the episode. If you enjoyed the episode, if you got anything out of it, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and maybe hit the notification bell, because even if you subscribe, it won't necessarily show you the new videos. That's how the algorithm works. But I do hope you guys got something out of it. If you watched it, if you got something out of it, shoot me a message, leave a comment. We'll talk. I will respond to comments if you guys comment. But anyway, for now, you guys have a great week, and we'll talk soon.